Welcome to the Action Network Podcast UFC Betting Preview. I'm your host for this week only, Billy Ward, and today I'm joined by our very special guest, John Lanfranca, taking over for Sean Zerillo, who is out for the week. We're going to look at all the best bets for this weekend's UFC cards with props, underdogs, and more. If you'd like to tail some of the bets we discussed today, make sure to find the quick slip links in the podcast and video description, or go to actionnetwork.com/bet now. First off, we have the main event. It is Corey Sandhagen versus Davison Figueiredo. Figueiredo coming in 2-1 at his new division. Heavy underdog to Corey Sandhagen. John, you have a bet on the Sandhagen side. Tell me about this fight and what you're thinking.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, as always. When this main event was made, it didn't really excite me that much because I kind of feel like the trajectory of these two guys' careers are going in opposite directions. And I feel like Corey Sandhagen, he wants to push a faster pace, and I think he basically has Figueiredo covered everywhere. I don't think Figueiredo's power, has translated to 135 as we, kind of thought of him as a dangerous striker with finishing upside at flyweight. I'm just not really seeing that at bantamweight, and I don't think anyone thinks he's going to go out there and KO Sandhagen. The best angle for me is, Sandhagen wants to push that pace, but Figueiredo lately has kind of been this like plodding, more methodical type fighter. In his fight versus even Cody Garbrandt, a fight that I had Figueiredo moneyline parlayed pretty substantially, he had to go to his grappling after round one right off the bat. And I just couldn't get that out of my head, that thinking that this guy couldn't, confidently strike with Garbrandt, a guy that probably he could have, you would think would be able to put away standing up. So the way I'm going to attack this fight is I'm going to lay a little bit of the chalk and say, Sandhagen's going to grind him down. I don't think he's going to go out there and KO Figueiredo. I don't even think really he's going to want to stand up, for long durations of the fight, even though I think he could piece him up, Sandhagen, that is, if he wanted to. So I'm taking Sandhagen. It's minus 195 that he wins in rounds 4 or 5 or by decision. That's on FanDuel, and I just think that's the best way to attack this because the over is pretty juiced at 4.5 rounds. So the odds makers are saying, that's probably where we're going, headed towards a decision. But I think, Sandhagen could find different ways to find a finish late in the fight. So again, 4, 5, or decision on FanDuel, minus 195. That's my best bet for the main event.
Yeah, I like that prop. I'm kind of seeing it pretty similarly, where I'm going to be looking to bet Corey Sandhagen live. The one thing I would push back on is Figueiredo's power not translating to 135. He knocked down Marlon Vera, Chito Vera. He's the only person in 24 UFC fights to drop Vera who's taken a ton of damage. And it's not like Vera's old. He's still 32, so we can't chalk that up to age. I do think Figueiredo is dangerous early. He's got a little bit of grappling upside should he choose to use it. Sandhagen's takedown defense in the UFC is 63%, which isn't great. He's not a bad grappler, and that stat is a little bit misleading because he just fought Umar, which is gonna throw that off a little bit. But Figueiredo usually has that grappling in his back pocket. Hard to use that in an extended fight as the fight extends because it does make you more tired than trying to stand and trade with someone, especially a taller fighter who can stay at range, get some recovery, rest a little bit. So what I'm doing is a quarter unit on Figgy at plus 430 heading into the fight and then looking for Sandhagen live. I think that's pretty much how you're seeing it too. I sometimes go back and forth on even giving out live bets because it's hard to track and people won't be watching it live, but this feels like a big enough event that I think a live bet is fair in this spot. Do you have any live interest, John, or are you just sticking with the pre-fight option?
I try to dive into live markets. It's just, even watching on a little bit of a 30-second delay can be difficult at times. But I've had a lot of success live betting. The thing about this fight, like you said, it's going to really come down to, when it starts to feel like Figueiredo's wearing down or getting tired, where he's not going to be as dangerous. That's the time to jump in. Yeah, you're probably going to get a better line than you would, pre-fight on Sandhagen.
That's the hope.
I mean, that's good enough. I mean, that's good enough reason to attack that way.
One other thing you said about this main event that I wholeheartedly agree with is that you weren't that excited about it, and I agree with you on that 100%. But one fight I am extremely excited about, possibly for the wrong reasons, is our fight of the night, the co-main event, Bo Nickel taking on Rainier de Ritter. Super weird fight in a lot of ways because we just saw Bo Nickel take on a dangerous submission grappler in Paul Craig, and it turned into the world's worst kickboxing match. And this is kind of the same fight, except RDR is a little bit better at those things than Paul Craig. I think the real determining factor with this one will be whether Nickel decides to wrestle. I think he probably heard the complaints or the noise from the MMA sphere about not doing that against Paul Craig. But I would say that RDR at this stage in their career is a little bit more dangerous on the ground. But if Nickel doesn't get to the ground, this is going to be potentially another very bad striking match. Nickel is awkward on the feet. You know, he really likes to load up a big left hand, but he leaves himself open for stuff and lunges forward. Doesn't throw a lot of great combinations. RDR is clearly not very comfortable on his feet either, but he can land a little bit of power. You know, we saw him knock down Gerald Mearshart, which isn't the greatest accomplishment, but he landed a knockdown in the UFC. I think he's the better technical striker, although clearly a worse athlete than Bo Nickel. So what I'm looking to do here is come in. I'm taking the money line on RDR. The best I'm seeing right now is plus 275. You have to assume that this fight is going to get a wider line as the casual fans come in and just pour in on Bo Nickel. You know, all the money line parlays are going to have Nickel sprinkled on top. All the people that don't really watch a ton. So what I'm suggesting, if you're hearing my voice and it is not Saturday afternoon when you're listening, hold that money a little bit. Let's wait to make that bet. I think we get a better line closer to fight time. And then the one kind of weird, just for fun one I'm throwing in there, RDR to land a single takedown at DraftKings is plus 450. He has a judo background, which kind of works well against wrestling just because they're a different style of takedowns. And we're also relying on the UFC scorekeeping to judge what could be called a reversal as a takedown there. It's plus 450. I wouldn't be shocked if Nickel tries to do some wall install and RDR hits a little trip or a little sumigashi or something against the fence. Probably won't hold him down from top for very long, but that's a fun one. Don't bet a ton on it. Would be our prop squad if we were still doing prop squad on non-pay-per-view weeks. John, you have what appears to be pretty identical. You're on the same money line side, and you also have a fun prop. Tell me what I missed.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And this is one of those fights where you go back and like watch these guys last couple of fights, you just feel worse and worse about whichever side you're on. Like I watched that DeRitter fight versus Mearshart again, and I immediately went to look and I was like, what is Bo Nickel's knockout prop? Because I mean, this guy, you know, leads with his head. He's going to get. I think DeRitter will actually go for a takedown, not like strategically, just like instinctually. He's going to be pushing forward and like think that. I mean, that's what he normally does. He did it against Kevin Holland within the first 10 seconds of the fight. And so I'm actually maybe want to tackle it with like a same game parlay and put a Bo Nickel knockdown in there because his actual knockout prop is too short. It's not even 2-1. But what I think,
well, because that includes the ground and pound. So
right, exactly.
when you're going to knock down instead of the ground and pound, it's different.
Yeah, of course. That's what I'm saying. If I get a same game parlay, maybe if I can find one where I can include one knockdown in that Nickel side, I could increase the payout. But so I think they will end up in some kind of grappling exchanges. I just feel like Nickel kind of hears that buzz. He's going to go for a takedown. Maybe he wants to prove his chops on the mat. And I think DeRitter, might just pure jiu-jitsu have a higher level right now. And I'm going to be sprinkling probably a quarter unit was what I normally play on my props. DeRitter sub at plus 750. All the main books are sitting about plus 750 right now. I don't know exactly how that's going to materialize. I mean, Bo Nickel is very confident in his wrestling, and we've seen him do well in grappling matches, but he's never faced someone this high level. This is the toughest fight of his career, and you just don't feel confident watching him right now that he's going to be able to move up the ranks. He already dropped out of the rankings, actually, just kind of admitting that he's not totally ready. So that's why I'm just like, this feels more toss-up fight to me than it is one guy being a 3-1 underdog. So I'm totally happy taking the plus 275 on DeRitter, and I'm going to sprinkle his sub at plus 750 as well.
Yeah, just to expand on what you said you think he's a better jiu-jitsu practitioner at this point in his career. RDR is a black belt in both judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I think Bo Nickel might have just gotten his purple belt in jiu-jitsu, but he's listed as a blue belt officially. So, clearly a better level. It was a while ago and before Bo really started submission grappling, but he got submitted by Gordon Ryan pretty easily. RDR is no Gordon Ryan, right? Like Gordon Ryan
Right.
is the Michael Jordan of submission grappling right now. But still, and the biggest thing for me is Bo Nickel has looked progressively less impressive in every fight we've seen him in, to the point that he was scared to take down Paul Craig, which was probably strategically correct because Paul Craig's only way to beat you was submitting you. But I think RDR is a better striker than Paul Craig, so it makes an interesting dynamic. DeRitter is definitely going to try some takedowns. What that looks like, we'll see. He's been publicly campaigning for Bo to mix in some
Yeah.
grappling. He's like, the fans aren't here to see a bad striking match between us. They want to see us on the ground. So just the fact that he's saying that, I think, tells you a lot about the grappling levels. And yeah, the submission prop makes a ton of sense. I will note I refreshed the odds since I've been talking. Starting to see some plus 300s on RDR, which will probably also push up your submission prop as well. So whether you're tailing John or I or both, I think the longer you wait on these, the better it will be on the juicy underdog. Speaking of underdogs, we'll go on to our favorite underdog section. We both have two on completely different fights. So you start us out, and then I'll give you mine after that.
Yeah, I'm attacking two dogs this week. I'm not insanely confident about either one, but Kang Lee is my first one at plus 120. I feel like Gaston Bolanos is being a little bit overrated, especially in the grappling realm, and I think Lee's being underrated in his grappling. I mean, Bolanos has 43% takedown defense so far in his UFC career, and he's been controlled for 14 minutes, giving up 8 total takedowns, and that's just in 3 fights. And we saw Octavius Romeus get on his back and go for an armbar and end up falling off in the first round. And I believe he got his back again in the second round. So that was a good win for Bolanos, no doubt about it. But then also we've seen Romeus in his last fight not look as great. So maybe it wasn't such a great win. No, I'm not knocking him for the Marcus McGhee loss. I think anyone would have lost in that spot. I just think Lee may be able to, push the grappling, fairly neutral in the striking department. Bolanos got stung by a couple strikes that he didn't like and seemed like he kind of got discombobulated as far as allowed the takedown easier after he got stung. I think Lee can do that and at least maybe bank some control time en route to, a close decision, or at least making this just take the plus money guy who's the better grappler, in a true toss up scenario where he can bank 2 rounds with takedowns. So that's my first dog that I like. And my second dog, which I absolutely hate going back to the well, but I'm in betting Dontel Mays plus 235. I mean, this guy, no one wants to bet him at all, and I get why he's becoming a bigger underdog after he lost in 1 minute and 17 seconds. Last time I wrote him up in a fight that I thought, again, he at 2-1, he was a value side. But we've seen Thomas Peterson, 1, get KO'd, and 2, we've seen him, lose behind a jab against Jamal Pogues. I don't think, I don't think Dontel Mays is some high fight IQ guy, but he has a massive reach advantage in this fight. I mean, Peterson might go out there, take him down, and submit him. But Dontel Mays, I mean, he could, if he can move around, he does have a little bit of athletic ability. He fight behind his jab, land a couple of big shots. Maybe he's the one, low output, but landing the cleaner, more powerful strikes. And, Peterson, we've already seen, is vulnerable to some of those bigger head strikes. So, I'm gonna take Mays at plus 235. I was willing to take it at plus 200. So I haven't even actually pulled the trigger on that one yet because I figured, again, I may be even getting a better line because nobody wants to bet Dontel Mays right now, but I am going to fire one more time on him.
I so much don't want to bet that fight in general because then it would force me to watch the fight because I'd be interested, and I don't want to do that either. So no pushback there. That's great. I'm pretending that fight doesn't exist. I'm going to hit on the Kwang Lee fight in a little bit. I actually agree with your money line side, but I have a different way of seeing it. The two I have kind of structured like you, one narrow underdog, one wider one. The narrow underdog, Cam Smotherman, he's plus 114. He's taking on Sergey Saidi. I think he has a pretty clear boxing and speed advantage, where Saidi is a longer, taller fighter who likes to kick and keep range. And traditionally, if you're a boxer who pressures and closes the distance and get inside on fighters like that, that's where you have the advantage. I thought Smotherman looked a lot better against Jake Hadley than he did on his unsuccessful Contender Series run. Neither of these guys have shown us any grappling. I don't think either of them are very good at grappling. Hopefully, for the sake of my bet, they just choose to make it a boxing versus kicking matchup. Smotherman at slight plus money, I think is pretty clear slide here. Then the other one, my long kind of gross bigger guy fight, is Ryan Loder. recent Ultimate Fighter winners taking on Azamat Bekaev. All we know about Bekaev that we've seen him do at a high level is grapple. He went to a split decision against Dylan Budka on the regional circuit, which is not a great sign with how Budka has been in the UFC. And Loader is a 3 or 4 time D1 All-American wrestler who kind of also can't strike. But if all Bekaev can do is grapple and he can't get a takedown here, could be another ugly striking match. Loader is plus 320. I don't think he's going to win, but I think he wins this one more than 1 out of 4 times, which is all we need at those odds. Could also see like a very boring takedown and stall plan from Loader, which is probably the optimal plan. I don't know that he does it, but again, super long odds. And speaking of long odds, you went real long on your top props this time. Interested in both of them? Tell me about your 2 and what you're thinking, and then I'll get back to Gaston Blano's Kwang Lee.
Yeah, so both of these I can make pretty quick. I mean, the first fight of the night, Juliana Miller, she's been off about 2 years, so hopefully you're going to see some improvements. But really, her win condition to me is submission. And I think Petrovic greatly overrates her grappling. And like I mentioned, some people just like instinctually want to grapple. I think she could be winning the striking exchanges and go for a takedown, and just you'd be like, why? Like, why are you doing this? And find herself in some bad positions, because that's what we've seen her do before. And I think Juliana Miller, I mean, if you're even slightly interested in the money line, you absolutely should be taking a shot at plus 700 on her submissions. Maybe grabbing an armbar, that's probably the most likely of them. But just basically Petrovic finding herself in a bad position, absolutely worth a 7-1 shot. And then my other prop is the one I like the most, and that is Marina Rodriguez and Jillian Robertson fight to end by KO TKO. I am going to sprinkle Rodriguez 10-1 also on KO, maybe a small sprinkle 15-1 in rounds 1 or 2. But this fight to end by KO is plus 550, and I think Jillian Robertson has gotten better at least trying to get her ground and pound going, causing some damage on the ground. I think that part of her game has been ascending. Otherwise, I mean, I think she's pretty stylistically the same type of fighter. And Marina Rodriguez, this is a girl, I mean, yes, Mackenzie Dern, I don't think is as good as wrestlers as far as getting the fight to the mat as Robertson, but, she pieced her up for 144 significant strikes. I just looked today. I mean, Marina Rodriguez has not opened as an underdog since that Dern fight and Amanda Hebus fight. Both, she won. She ended up KO Hebus in round 2. And she's fought Lemos, Lucindo, Gianna Roba, she was a favorite, closed a favorite against. So I just think she's being underlooked in the spot. I think the line is too wide. But I think if Jillian can't get her grappling going, it's pretty clear, even 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes striking with Marina Rodriguez, she could land something to end the fight. So whether it's ground and pound from Jillian or on the feet with Rodriguez, I think 5-1, I think this fight ends by KO TKO. Like you said, more than 20% of the time, that's all we need in the spot.
Yeah, I really like that one. I would never in a million years have arrived at that on my own, but as soon as I saw you put it in the sheet, it made a lot of sense. Marina Rodriguez, very high-level striker, so if it stays standing, you'd like to think she could get a finish there. And Robertson, if she gets takedowns and looks for ground and pound on the top, that one makes a lot of sense. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Juju Miller. I said somewhere else this week that the thesis here is that we haven't seen her in a really long time, and like in a perfect world, she's been training and getting better, in which case she should probably beat Petrovic, but this is pretty low-level fight. They're both 1 and 2 in the UFC. Neither has been particularly impressive. I think the only thing I'd worry about with the submission prop is that she uses ground and pound rather than submission. Like, if she wins, I'm pretty sure it'll be on the ground. I'm just not sure if it will end in submission or ground and pound. So you go the inside the distance on Juju Miller and still get a big, juicy price. And I think hit that same thesis.
Yeah.
Definitely not our best bets, though. Those are pretty long shot odds. You have one really interesting angle that I think is super sharp on the Jeremy Stephens Mason Jones fight. So start with that one, then we have another one in common.
So these 2 best bets are definitely the 2 spots that I feel best about on this card. Yeah. So Mason Jones, it's actually minus 135 or 145 on FanDuel, but it's only minus 110 on DraftKings, and that's to win by decision or by submission against Jeremy Stephens. So minus 110 on DraftKings. I mean, he's a minus up to 550 favorite right now, Jeremy Stephens.
75.
Yeah, minus 575 favorite. So you're getting a pretty big discount. I don't think he's going out there to KO Jeremy Stephens. and I don't think he should even try to. I mean, he'd be silly not to try to implement his grappling. I mean, Jeremy Stevens has been boxing and bare knuckle fighting. He just took this fight. He called up Dana White and got this fight. So how much grappling has Stevens even been training? The last time we saw him on the
Right.
UFC, he was submitted by Mateus Gamrot, who's not some submission artist. The last time we saw him in the PFL, Stevens was submitted, almost submitted in the first round by arm triangle, and then was submitted in the second round. So, Mason Jones, if he wants to take the path of least resistance, show his improvements, show that he's ready to come back to UFC, I think he goes out there and tries to take down Jeremy Stevens. If he wants to, play with fire and get into this striking match with Stevens, that would be the worst fight IQ, and I don't see how his coaches can let him go out there and do that, with that type of game plan. So, that angle that he, grinds Stevens to decision or just takes him down and submits him, I love that at minus 110. Do you want me to start with the second one or go ahead?
I'll jump in on that one real quick. I absolutely love that one. I've been trying to figure out a ways to bet that. Jeremy Stevens' last win in a combat sport that allowed grappling was more than 7 years ago, where he knocked out Josh Emmett. His last 2 wins were both knockouts. Hasn't landed a takedown in competitive MMA in a million years. And Mason Jones left the UFC, but I believe the story was he left the UFC at his own request. He was 1-2-1, losses to Mike Davis and Ludovic Klein. Nothing wrong with that. And he averages over 3 takedowns per 15 minutes in his UFC stint. So that is a great way to cut some of the juice out on Jones, because you don't want to pay minus 575 on anything in MMA. Sometimes I feel like the odds of a guy, tripping over the camera wire on their way into the cage and tearing an ACL is better than that. So absolutely love that angle. It's a fun fight because Jeremy Stevens from Iowa, he came back on a 1-fight deal, literally just to do this one, and then he's going to go back to sports where crucially they don't allow you to grapple. Those are the sports he's been competing in. So I love your point. Probably hasn't been training it much. Who knows what he's been doing in the off time, but at almost 39 years old, don't really see a projection that his grappling is going to get better. And then we have another fight in common. We're taking a different angle. You start with yours, and then I'll jump in where I'm going.
Yeah, this is the one where right off the bat, this has jumped out to me. The under 2.5 rounds with Daniel Rodriguez, Santiago Ponzinibbio is plus 180. I'm just going to take plus 140 that the fight does not go to decision. 2 older fighters. I mean, let's be honest. Ponzinibbio's chin to me is basically gone. In his last fight versus Harris, Carlton Harris, basically was finished. Amazing comeback. And the thing I love about this is that even when he's hurt, even when he's rocked, he's still coming forward and throwing punches. And, he pulled off the comeback, but he's just as easily could beat KO. I feel like his durability has waned and decreased significantly. And I actually feel like Daniel Rodriguez is getting to that point. While he got finished by Machado Gary, no disrespect there. But okay, Gastelum, he fought, didn't get finished. That might seem impressive. Gastelum hasn't won by knockout since 2017 against Michael Bisping. So it's not like Gastelum's been finishing guys. So he didn't finish D-Rod. And Alex Morono, another guy that, doesn't have big power. But Morono was lighting him up with overhands right. Daniel Rodriguez gets in the pocket, takes one to give one, throws his strikes, and he doesn't. It's not like he's moving out of the way. I would be shocked if these guys aren't in some wild exchanges. Maybe early on they feel each other out, but Ponzinibbio, as for somebody that has his chin, seems like it's going. The guy is still very aggressive. Even when he's hurt, and I feel like someone is landing something in this fight to put the other guy away. It's a high variance fight. I don't know who's going to win. If I had to pick, I think Rodriguez has looked a little slower, but I think the durability is gone further for Ponzinibbio. So I'm going to stay away from that and just say one guy is getting the KO. I don't know who it's going to be, but plus 140, I'm all over this.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense too. I think the gist of it is all the power belongs to Ponzinibbio. I don't know when the last time Rodriguez dropped somebody, but it's been a long time. His last knockdown was 10 fights ago for Daniel Rodriguez. So, but yeah, Ponzinibbio tends to lend himself to fights like that. He's 2-2 over his last 4. Both of his last 2 wins were knockouts. Both of those fights, he got dropped first and then came back and finished the other guy. So it's almost the plan at this point. Like, we're almost doing the Homer Simpson strategy from that episode a million years ago of The Simpsons where he fought as a boxer. But I am on the Ponzinibbio side. There's a couple reasons here. The first is kind of just a clear system play. They're both 2-3 in their last 5. Ponzi has 2 knockout wins and 2 split decision losses in that time span. So, like, arguably could be 4-1 over his last 5. Daniel Rodriguez, also 2-5 in his last, or 2-3 in his last 5, has been finished twice, and both of his wins were split decisions. So if we're just banking on some variance or some, judging correction, Ponzinibbio is the side here, and especially when he throws so much harder than D-Rod, because that's going to play up to the judges if we get there, which I agree with you isn't the likeliest. And I think if either of them are going to grapple, it's probably Ponzinibbio. Their career stats are about the same, but we've seen more of it from Ponzinibbio in recent fights. He also trains at American Top Team. I trust them in terms of game planning more than the 10th Planet gym that Daniel Rodriguez trains at. I have no idea why we're training at 10th Planet gyms here in 2025 as MMA fighters. Like, they're great if you're going to go grapple, but I don't know what we're doing with that. They're both about the same age. As you pointed out, both have durability concerns. I just trust Ponzinibbio to find the button more, if not even first. I was going to say first, but first is not accurate because he might get dropped first and then figure it out after. We hit on most of the fights on the card. Is there anything else that you're betting wanted to bring up? I know we didn't get to Montel Jackson, Daniel Marcos. Oh, I have one other one I was going to get to. That was my mistake. Gaston Bolaños by knockout at plus 300. He's the one fighting Kwang Lee. You kind of undersold it a little bit, but Gaston Bolaños was a Muay Thai world champion, can't grapple. Kwang Lee is a very good grappler, can't strike. If Bolaños is going to win, that's how. So at plus 300, I'd be fine even playing that with Lee's money line and have plus money on both sides. I'm not very impressed by Kwang Lee's striking at all. That's been pretty bad so far in his UFC career. And yeah, so I agree with you basically on the money line side, but he got knocked down and beat up pretty bad in his their second UFC fight against Zhao Long, a road to the UFC prospect. I don't think very highly of those road to the UFC guys. I'm very worried about the grappling defense for Bolaños because he doesn't have any, but very binary fight. That's his main win condition. So with that, I believe we've covered all but 2 of the fights. Do you got anything on Tate Santos or Jackson Marcos?
Yeah, last thing I want to say is add one more thing to that Ponzinibbio Rodriguez fight.
Yeah,
which kind of gives me the vibes, a couple weeks ago, Nakia Krylov, Dominic Reyes. I wrote up the fight would end by KO TKO, also plus 140. I mean, Krylov hadn't been KO'd. I mean, it's been a decade-ish. I mean, and he got hit once on the button. It was over. And then even last week, Nicholas Dalby, they said it a million times. He hasn't been finished in 29, 30 professional fights. I was on Randy Brown KO. He was KO'd. So I'm just, just because these guys have been super durable throughout their career, specifically Rodriguez, doesn't mean he's going to be able to take the firepower from Ponzinibbio. So just wanted to add that. If Miesha Tate, I'm going to bet. The line's getting a little wide, but if I can get it minus 140, minus 138-ish, I'm good with that. I don't think she wants to take damage at this stage in her career. She looks like she's in good shape. We saw her last time out against Julia Avila. I mean, she was shooting takedowns literally within the first 10 seconds of each round. There's no reason she shouldn't do that here versus Santos. Santos, 40-ish, 43% or so. Takedown defense hasn't really been able to stop takedowns. Got taken out by Holly Holm 4 times, lost the decision there. I think Miesha Tate's path is super clear to win here, and she's not going to mess around. We know that. So I'll back her at minus 140.
Yeah, I said earlier in the week I was looking to bet Yana Santos, assuming that the line would blow out just because it's Miesha Tate, former champion, blah, blah, blah. That hasn't really happened. Like, I would be on the Santos side if it gets to plus 140, plus 150. And that's because the only people Miesha Tate has beaten in the last 8 years were pretty much already retired before they fought Miesha Tate. Like, 1 foot out the door, didn't really want to be there. We haven't seen her against anyone even remotely active win. With that said, Yana Santos is not good and has never had good takedown defense, so it's a tough stylistic matchup. Keep an eye on that. Like, you could even take the Tate side now and see if that name recognition pushes the line. That hasn't happened, though. And then the only other fight we didn't touch on was, I believe, Montel Jackson versus Daniel Marcos. Weird fight. Jackson has basically fought once per year, and then just absolutely obliterated low-level competition when he does. Now he's getting a step up in competition against Daniel Marcos. I think this is a good spot where if you wanted to bet Jackson by knockout, that's plus 350 or as high as plus 400 at FanDuel. That should be closer to his money line odds, I think. And then from a money line side, I would take Daniel Marcos, but no strong thoughts on that. Might bet that. Be sure to follow me in the app to see. Any thoughts on that before we get out of here, John?
No, I mean, I think you kind of covered it. I think Marcos, if I had to bet money line, I would take him. If Jackson can't knock him out, it's probably going to be a really closely contested fight as Marcos' fights have been. Some, I probably didn't think he won, but just if it goes 3 rounds, I would like to have the plus money in my back pocket. That's the gist of the breakdown.
The other weird thing for me on Jackson is I think they flashed the stat in his last fight that he was the second tallest bantamweight in the division. I don't know if they've signed someone taller, but he's very tall for the division at 5'10". He's now 33, and you got to think that weight cut continues to take more and more out of you, especially in terms of like endurance and durability. So I'm worried for him as he's getting to his mid-30s for a division that he's already too big for. I believe he made weight, but even so, that's going to take more and more out of you. So if you don't get that quick knockout, it makes it a little bit more concerning. But that's going to do it for our UFC betting preview. You can find more UFC betting content, including my full preview for RDR Bo Nickel at actionnetwork.com, as well as John and I both in the best bets. If you'd like to instantly tail some of the bets we discussed on today's show, look for the quick slip links in the podcast and video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/betnow. Don't forget to download the free, award-winning Action Network app and sign up for Action Pro for immediate access to expert picks and analysis from John and I, Sean Zerillo, wherever he is right now, and all of our Action Action experts. Best of luck with all your bets this weekend. Enjoy the violence, and thanks for listening.